to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. I'm Jamira Burley, here with my co-host, Brea Baker. And today we are honoring Black Maternal Health Week, an annual week of awareness, advocacy, and action to address the disparities in maternal health outcomes for Black women in the United States.
Yes, as a Black mama myself, this is a conversation near and dear to my heart. Black Maternal Health Week was established in 2018 by the Black Mamas Matter Alliance, BMMA, and continues to be celebrated by Black parents, families, and birth workers every year since. The racial disparities are undeniable, making it clear that Black people experience racism from the womb. But we can and will change that no matter who is in office. So today we're going to spend time honoring the Black people who bring forth life and the ways we can all make it that much easier, safer, and more beautiful to do so. But y'all know us. Of course, we got to start by remixing the headlines. So let's get into the latest.
Because it's a hot
headline
mess.
Number one. Woo, what a doozy of a week, of a month, of a year it has been. We had a Fox News host get on Beyonce's internet and tell us that anyone worried about their 401k should sacrifice like it's wartime. I think she specifically said, you know, when we're at war, people give up their bonds and people do what they got to do for this country. And so if you're worried about your investments and your savings accounts, you need to start sacrificing like it's wartime. Girl, I did not consent to this war. I did not vote for this commander in chief, and I am not surrendering my life savings to him either.
I feel so embarrassed that this woman is Black.
No, and that was the worst part. Worst part? One of us? I mean, not one of us.
Like, not only is the wig crooked, but maybe your analogy is crooked as well. Because we're not at war. That can only be something declared by Congress. We are not at war. Two, this is a self-inflicted wound that the United States is inflicting on itself unnecessarily. Donald Trump got handed one of the best economies in the world, especially after COVID, especially after such a disastrous president during his first term, which led to many of the financial constraints that we face during the early days of COVID. And now he got handed one of the best recovering economies post-COVID, and he managed to destroy that in less than 100 days. That, I will have to say, is a skill that I hope to never achieve. Never.
Yeah,
never.
1,000,000%, 1,000,000%, girl.
Yeah. Don't tell people like they should be willing to sacrifice their life savings as if when times turn around that they're more likely to get that money back, because it's always the poor people. It's always those who are most disenfranchised, the ones having to make the biggest sacrifice. And that's unfair. It's so expensive for in this country.
Yeah, 1,000,000%, 1,000,000%. And we're already suffering and sacrificing more than we ever asked to anyway. So don't add on to my trials and tribulations.
The levels of stupidity. But, you know, it is a time, you know, it reminds me of a meme I saw. I don't know if you saw me posted on my page, but someone said April Fool's is canceled because this whole year has been a joke.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, I get it. Yep. I'm happy we're all on the same page of the level of incompetence, but you know,
1,000,000%.
We'll think it through, because we've been through worse. And although we lost many people along the way, I'm sure we're going to survive this, especially because we see people taking action. So that's exciting.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of worse, I know you got a crazy headline.
Another headline that we see is student loan borrowers are outraged when payments increase after court blocks Biden-era programs. You know, I have been seeing so many of my friends who are first-generation college students, many people online, talking about how, unfortunately, for many of them, their student loan payments have increased by almost double. They were on loan repayments that was coupled with, well, it was comparable to how much they were actually making. And now that has increased tenfold for so many people across the country. And so I think I read somewhere that there's like 9 million Americans who are behind on their student loan payments. And it's probably one of the biggest numbers that we see, especially comparable to the housing crisis of 2008. And so with this being coupled with what we just talked about in regards to the tariffs and how that's going to impact people for 1K. Now you're having student loan payments take more money out of people's pockets. And that doesn't present or paint a good picture for the economy for the rest of the year or future.
At all, as if the economy needed any help struggling. Like, what you don't want is people saddled with debt while there are also tariffs So there's going to be no circulating of the American dollar because no one can afford to.
I told you I'm going to know by a year, girl. I am so serious. I have a job and I just am at the point where everything just feels so uncertain.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Yeah. Things that I wish we're feeling a little more uncertain, though, is Eric Adams running for mayor again. For those unfamiliar, Eric Adams is the mayor of New York City right now. He's been doing a bang up, horrible job at it. And folks cannot wait to get him out. And he knows that. And so instead of just ceding the floor and allowing new leadership to step forward, he is riding the coattails of his buddy Trump, who just got him out of corruption charges and decided, I know Democrats aren't going to vote for me, so I'm going to run as an independent and hope that Republicans and conservatives are able to bring me over. And it's just not going to happen. The city is so fed up with him. But I think it's hilarious that he waited this long to announce that, knowing that the deadlines for him to switch parties and become a Republican have ended. And so he's like, well, I got to run as an independent.
Yeah, I mean, and I think this is indicative of politics across the United States of, in many ways, where we've seen individuals across both party lines who are accused of, who've been convicted of, who have accusations against them regarding their illegal dealings, of their misconduct in regards to their relationships with other individuals. And yet they still think that they have the right? And that they are more likely to be elected despite these crimes. It's kind of annoying. And it also just is indicative of everything wrong with American politics. And also just, New York deserves better. New York is one of the largest economies in the United States. It's bigger than some countries' GDP. And it has a potential to really be impactful and transformative. And we've seen elected officials like Eric Adams, unfortunately, not take their job seriously and not respect the interests of a wide range of New Yorkers. And you're from New York. I lived there for 4 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there's so much opportunity. And so I would implore anyone from New York to definitely educate yourself on all the candidates. New York has an interesting election process, right? Like it's, what is it called? Rank candidates?
Ranked choice voting. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, Yeah.
I mean, I think there's pros and cons, but in these situations, it definitely gets used to get around the process and the party, because he's supposed to be a Democrat. He knows that he's not been acting like one and that he's not popular with Democrats. And so he's trying to get around that by going as an independent, knowing that he'll have, a better chance there. But again, like you said, New Yorkers, do your research. If you do not want a bottle girl as your mayor, if you do not want a party promoter as your mayor, then you need to get up and vote in the primary, which is coming up in June, and then in the general election, which is coming up in November.
Yeah, and y'all got a wide range of candidates, some great and some shall not be mentioned. Yeah. On to the next headline. RFK Jr. layoffs expected to gut workers at the safety agency known as the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. Occupational Safety and Health. That's a tongue twister.
Yeah. You had me shaking my head at RFK Jr. So,
I was going to give him a little grace today, but thousands of individuals are being laid off. American workers, American consumers are being hit with like a 1-2 punch from every angle. Just when you think that you're going to be able to keep your job, to be able to afford the tariffs, that increases. Just when you think you're going to be able to keep more money in your pocket, your student loan payments increases. It feels like no relief is in sight. And the fact that this is a health safety agency that is meant to protect American consumers, and RFK, who quote unquote prides himself on caring about American workers and American consumers, is laying off 10,000 people. And mind you, there was already 10,000 vacancies within that agency already. So it puts a huge constraint on workers and also makes all of our lives unsafe.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And it's also just like, every industry and agency that's being gutted feels so essential. Like They're not going over things that it's like, oh yeah, I've actually never heard of that and I have no idea what they do. Like the Worker Safety Agency, really? Like you couldn't have thought of, I mean, it's mind-blowing.
Mind you, this is a relatively new agency, right? Like it's less than maybe 65 years old. And it's, it was created because Congress in the 1970s realized that they needed to investigate outbreaks. They needed to investigate injuries of workers. And we're almost giving more power back to the employer while making workers less safe.
Yeah. Scary times.
All of us. It's not just the workers who were laid off, but also to all of us who have a job, because unfortunately this is capitalism. And if you don't work, you don't get fed and you don't get housed, you don't get clothed. It's going to have triple effects. I mean, trickle down effects across the board.
And triple effects, because it'll definitely compound.
Yeah. And I'm just curious if Trump voters are finally waking up to the knowledge that what they voted for is a nightmare and that it's impacting them more than they ever thought it could impact people who are just like minorities, right? Because let's be honest, we know that the vast majority of them voted for these things because they thought it was only going to impact Black and brown folks. And now it's going to lead into their reality. So.
Oh, yeah. I feel like there's a new story every day of someone who voted for Trump having a family member deported, someone who voted for Trump being fired, someone who voted for Trump being impacted. And it goes to show that people were very individualistic and short-sighted when they entered into that ballot booth. And now they're realizing that the chickens are coming home to roost and we are all affected. Even if you're not being fired, you are losing protections. Even if you are not being deported, you are a part of a community that is less safe, that is heavily policed, where there's no accountability, no checks and balances. And that's a really scary place to be in. It's a fascist regime. But anyway, things are getting dark here.
Anyway, every day is getting dark.
Right.
No, but that's true. But again, there's hope. There is hope in the small pockets of America where people are not taking this laying down. They're not compliant in advance.
Yeah. Exactly.
But with that being said, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back. As I mentioned before, you are watching On the Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network.
We begin tonight with the people who are really running the country right now. Now, Trump is often wrong and misleading about a lot of things, but especially about history. Donald Trump falling in line with President Elon Musk.
In the wake of the unsettling news that MSNBC has canceled Joy Ann Reid's primetime show, The Readout, Roland Martin and the Black Star Network would like to extend an invitation to all of the fans of Joy Ann Reid's MSNBC show to join us every night to watch Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming on the Black Star Network for news, discussion of the issues that matter to you, and the latest updates on the twice impeached, criminally convicted felon-in-chief Donald Trump and his unprecedented assault on democracy, as well as co-president Elon Musk's takeover of the federal government. The Black Star Network stands with Joy Ann Reid and all folks who understand the power of Black voices in media. We must come together and never forget that information is power. Be sure to watch Roland Martin Unfiltered weeknights, 6 p.m. Eastern at youtube.com/Roland S. Martin or download the Black Star Network app.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. Before the break, Jamira and I unpacked some of the most pressing headlines, and now we're going to shift gears to a topic that is just as urgent as it is overlooked, which is Black maternal health. Today is the last day of Black Maternal Health Week, and we are talking about Black mothers, Black babies, and the birth workers and advocates who are doing the life-saving work that our system continues to fail at. Studies show that regardless of class or educational attainment, Black women are more vulnerable and susceptible to medical neglect when giving birth, and it threatens our lives and also the welfare of our children.
Yeah, it's very easy to think that this is a new phenomenon, right? This is something that just started yesterday. But the reality is Black women have been sounding the alarm for generations about the medical neglect and the reproductive injustices that they have experienced systematically across the board due to systematic racism.
Yeah.
From forced sterilization to the modern day maternal mortality crisis. And the goal has always been control, right? Control of our bodies, control of our movements, control of our identity. Our choices have been stripped away from us, and our right to bring life into this world has become a safety hazard. And that has been devastating for our communities across the country.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's not forget, this isn't just about bad policy, though that is a huge part of it. But ultimately, this is about centuries of erasure, silencing the lived experiences of Black women and birthing people. Because the reality is that if you're not counted, if no one is listening to you, then you can't be considered when people are discerning what good care looks like for your community. And ultimately, that's where we're at. America and America's healthcare system has not taken the time to invest in what quality healthcare looks like for Black birthing people. And so now we're in a place where we are still more likely to die during childbirth or suffer complications, regardless of income or education. And that is a national disgrace we should all be concerned about, regardless of your celebrity. I mean, you have everyone from Serena Williams to Beyonce talking about their experiences with this. So it's really a widespread issue.
Yeah, it's a widespread issue, and it is an issue that has the ability to cripple the Black community, right? Intentionally so. And we are seeing this happen from the disparities that we see in policy, but also the way that women are treated in the actual, the doctor's office, right? The lack of care, the lack of understanding of our pain, the lack of trusting us to know our bodies best. And I think that in many ways have both made women already feeling nervous about having children even more nervous. I know that's one of the things I've thought about for the last few years is my fear now of having a child, because I could potentially lose my life unnecessarily because of just lack of care and consideration for me. And it's not, as I mentioned, it's not just happening in the delivery room. It's happening in policy spaces. It's happening in medical schools. It's happening in on government websites, right? If you look at even how doctors are talking about it now, they'll tell you that they were taught that Black people can endure more pain, that Black people were oftentimes lying about the extent of their pain. And that has rippling effects across the entire medical field. And it shows up in the fact that more women are dying every single day. And unfortunately, many times their child is dying as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that impact is generational. I mean, the angst that you talk about, like anxiety and stress is not just a figment of the mind. It has such a deep impact on our bodies. And so even if you're not being medically neglected, or even if you're not experiencing racism in the doctor's office, just the fact that we have so much trepidation entering into the process, that we can't go through pregnancy lighthearted and carefree and just joyful, also has its own impact. And when Black mothers are harmed, entire families and communities are impacted. That's just the reality. And that's the issue of this racism affecting us from the womb, is that the moment a Black child enters this world, they are not starting with a clean slate. They're starting with all of the things that they experienced while they were inside of their mama, while they were inside of that birthing parent. And so this is about survival. And it should not be up to just doulas and midwives alone to fill the gap, though we are so grateful that they're doing it. And actually, the lack of doula and midwifery care has been such a large contributor to the increase in the Black maternal health crisis, because when Black women have doulas and midwives, we are better cared for. We are listened to. Our concerns don't go ignored, but it's when we are thrown to the wolves that we are susceptible to any number of post-pregnancy complications, of feeling like, as you said, our pain is being dismissed and, oh, that's normal. You're supposed to be in pain. And it's like, we know our bodies, and it's time that there are folks in these positions, in these medical rooms, who are cognizant of that.
Yeah. And I'm happy you mentioned that, like, it's not just, the mother's experience in in the delivery room, but also, or the child's experience as they're being delivered. But like, it is ingrained within our bodies, right? Because this has been happening generationally. There's a really great book called My Grandmother's Hands. It talks about the phenomenon that much of our trauma is that of our ancestors' trauma and how that has been passed on from generation to generation. And the lack of trust that we have on institutions that we as taxpayers pay into, who have rarely cared for us, who have rarely shown us a level of care that is due to us as just because we're human, right? And that we are paying citizens. And that extends all the way to those who are in some of our most vulnerable positions, like in prisons, in the US prisons. So let's not forget that incarcerated Black women are oftentimes giving birth in shackles, right?
Yeah.
You're in a vulnerable moment, right? You're giving birth. You're doing one of the most beautiful and joyous things that a human can do, which is bring life into this world. And the state believes that you should be in shackles. And they don't have access to doulas. They don't have access to pain medication or even dignity for that matter. And the state continues to criminalize our reproductive rights by denying us basic care. And I'm a firm believer. I don't care. I think it is a representation of our humanity and how we treat each other, and the fact that we are looking at women in prisons and not providing them the most basic care that should be afforded to them as someone who's just giving birth. And that should extend to all women and all birthing people. I would love, I know you're probably more versed in this than I am, because I know folks are hearing birthing people or people who can birth. Would you mind like extending that a little bit for folks who are hearing this for the first time? Because I know, especially in the Black community, there's a lot of, misconception and a lot of homophobia or transphobia. And I think that we have to recognize that, a wide range of people can give birth, and we should respect their ability across the board, regardless of how they identify.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I'm actually glad that you paused for us to be able to do that. So in general, like when you're speaking about a specific individual, it is okay to be as specific as that person identifies. For example, when I'm talking about just Jamira, I can say that you are a Black woman. And if Jamira is pregnant, I can say that you are a Black mama or a Black, whatever the case may be. But when we're talking about a group of people who might not all identify as women, because people can have uteri and give birth, but still identify as non-binary or as trans. And there's so many, and we are an LGBT safe and affirming podcast space. And so, we just want to be mindful of the fact that not everyone identifies as a woman or uses the term mother or mama when referring to themselves. But yes, I think that I often hear, especially to your point, when there is the homophobia or the transphobia outrage and people are like, oh my gosh, this woke culture is just changing everything. And now we can't be mothers. No, if you identify as a woman and you identify as a mother, then yes, when I'm talking about you, I will absolutely call you a mother. When I'm talking about an entire population of people, some of whom do not identify as that, we're just going to say Black birthing people. You might also hear, and this is like a newer term, that breastfeeding, a more like inclusive term for that is chest feeding, because not everyone has breasts. And that's not even just, non-binary and trans folks. There are cisgender women for whom have had breasts removed for medical reasons and are just like, listen, I'm still able to provide for this child in whatever way. But chest feeding is a more inclusive term. And it doesn't stop anyone from still using mother or mama or breast when they're referring to themselves. That's what my wife used when referring to herself. But yeah, if you're talking to someone who doesn't use she, her pronouns, they might feel more comfortable with, listen, I'm a Black birthing person. I am capable medically of giving birth. I have or am about to do so. But the term mother or mama or breastfeeding maybe doesn't just feel as right. And so when we're talking about the millions of Black people who go into doctors' offices or birthing centers every single day to give birth, we use that more gender neutral term.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that outside the Western world, these people have always existed within our society. They have always existed. And they might not have always had language for it or labels for it, but they've always existed. And I also think it's important that, we talked about how the violence that women experience when giving birth, or people who can birth experience when giving birth. That's a lot of giving birth words, but the violence is not just in the delivery room. It's not just in the doctor's office. It's also in the language we use and making sure that people are safe enough to be seen and heard. Because what we're seeing now is the erasure of not just those people, right? People who identify differently, but also the erasure of Black people, the word Black, the word diverse, the word equity, like we're being almost erased. And we have to extend that to other people as well.
Yes. And the attacks on these words, they're so linked to the attacks on the communities. For example, book bans. It was a lot of Black authors being banned first. And in the name of banning Black authors, to protect other people and specifically white people and white students. But those book bans also turned to book bans against any LGBTQ content. And so then you'll find Black people supporting bans against LGBTQ content, like I don't want my child, exposed to that too early. But those same bans are being used to keep your children from being exposed to anything about Black history. So we need to be really cognizant of not doing the enemy's work for them, not being, a devil's advocate for a literal devil, right? Like we can be mindful of the fact that it's okay to be exposed to lots of different experiences. And it's okay for you to say, no, I still am this and I identify this way. And no one is trying to indoctrinate you. If the language doesn't resonate with you personally, then it's not for you. But being aware of it is a beautiful thing. And I'm so glad that you brought this up because there has always been gender fluidity and trans folks, even when the labels were different on the African continent. So for those of us who are part of this diaspora, it is white supremacy that says women have to look like this and men have to look like this. And oftentimes the language of transphobia is wielded against Black women. Oh, Michelle Obama her arms are too manly. Oh, Serena Williams, she's too brolic. She's too.
And then that extends to their pain, right? Like how much they can experience pain, how much based on their appearance or their proximity to the Western world's ideas about femininity. All of these things are equally connected.
So intertwined because it's the same people who were like, yeah, I just feel like I'm in support of real women. And then all it takes is one racist and transphobic person to be like, well, you got a little, 5 o'clock shadow there. So you look like a man or this or that. And now you're being policed too. Now your femininity is being policed. And now you realize, and the markers of femininity are so unreal because there are cisgender women who cannot have children. So bearing children is not what makes you a woman. There are cisgender women who do not have large breasts or large butts. And that doesn't mean that they're any less of a woman. There are cisgender women for whom do not have periods. And that is not what doesn't make them a woman. And so I just think it's also really mindful that the language that some people use to try and vet out who is a real biological woman can also be used against those same people one day. And so it's not that you should only care because it'll be used against you, but we did talk about this earlier during the Remixing the Headlines. Like if you're so single-minded, one day that same mentality is going to come back to bite you and there's going to be no one there to protect you because you were too busy weaponizing it against other people. So we got to change our hearts and minds. Policy, we talk about policy and we're going to get into that deeper, but ultimately real people implement policy. Real people police each other. And so if we are not conscious of the ways that it's like, ooh, I'm thinking like an oppressor right now, then we're going to turn into exactly who we say that we're fighting against. And so we are here for anyone who is bringing forth life, anyone who is supporting the people who are bringing forth life, and all of the, care workers who do it too.
Yeah, no, agreed. You beautifully said, it takes all of us. And it also is a reminder that we have to make space for a wide range of identities if we're truly going to get closer to liberation. And I get it that a lot of people don't want liberation, right? They want to be in proximity to power. Recognize that power was never created with you in mind. And it's definitely not going to be extended to you in a real way. And we are seeing this come out in in things like Project 2025, right? Like is intentionally meant to separate and to create division across all of us. Which brings us to our next segment. We're going to, continue to talk about Black women because my favorite topic, obviously. We're going to continue to talk about birth workers and organizers and health advocates who are standing in the gap, not only saving lives, but transforming what maternal care can look like and should look like and feel like. When we come back, we're going to be joined by another brilliant a leader in this space who is really helping to lead the charge on this work. And for those who are tuning in, you're tuning in to The Other Side of Change only on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. Joining us now is Alicia Simpson, a lactation consultant, reproductive justice advocate, best-selling author, and nutritionist who founded Pea Pod Nutrition. Alicia has a burning need to answer the whys in life, and her question of why do African-American mothers have the lowest rate of breastfeeding in the United States fueled the research behind her master's thesis. And that thesis is titled Sociocultural Barriers to Breastfeeding in African-American Women with Focused Intervention to Increase Prevalence. Okay, that's a mouthful, but it's an important mouthful because that means Alicia is doing the work to make sure that Black children are getting what they need and that Black mothers are being exposed to all of the different tools and tactics and ways that they can be drivers of their motherhood experiences. So we're so excited to have her. And equally as important as all of those accolades and titles that I just mentioned, Alicia is a mother. And so we're so glad to have you on The Other Side of Change, Alicia. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm just curious if you can start by helping to really ground our listeners on the current state of Black maternal health, especially when we know that Black women in the United States is 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes. That number seems very scary to me. I'm sure it's scary to those who are listening. So can you help ground us in the reality of what we're facing right now and maybe start us in a direction of, where this needs to go in order to resolve it?
Absolutely. I wish that I could be the bearer of better news. However, the state of Black maternal health in the United States is still dismal. Currently, our rates of maternal mortality are 50 per 100,000 births, and that is up from the previous year. The previous year it was 49.5, which is the opposite of every other ethnicity that has been studied. So in Hispanic women, the rates went down from 17 to 12. deaths per 100,000 live births. For Asian Americans, it went from 13 to 11. And for white Americans, it went from 19 to 14.5. So while there has, without a doubt, been big changes that have happened in our healthcare system that have benefited birthing parents, they unfortunately have not benefited Black birthing parents because we went up. We had more mothers dying while everybody else had more mothers living, more mothers able to connect with their babies, more whole families. We hear story after story after story of fathers who have lost the love of their lives and are now raising these children on their own for senseless reasons, for very senseless reasons. And we really deserve a fearless pregnancy. Black women are going into pregnancy, unfortunately, much unhealthier than many other parts of our population, than Hispanic women, than white women, than Asian American women. And that is not a factor of just inherently being Black that makes us unhealthier. It is not morality that makes us unhealthier. It is not our choices that makes us unhealthier. It is environmental racism. It is systemic racism. It is the systems that we are born into that have really made the difference. So while things like improving hemorrhage kits being in every L&D or labor and delivery unit to ensure that if a mother begins to hemorrhage, which is our number one cause of maternal mortality, so if a mother begins to hemorrhage, immediately they can stop it. And it is a very quick, easy, cheap solution. And so that is the reason for most of the decline that we have seen in maternal mortality. But because it hasn't happened for Black women, we know it is not just these physical things that happen in the hospital. We know that it is more, that it is the ecosystem in which we are living.
Yeah. That is really deep and important. And that's really sad and scary to realize that the rates are getting worse. Because my next question was going to be that there have been so many alarms sounded. I mean, I mentioned some of the celebrities earlier who have been publishing op-eds, Allison Felix, an Olympian, was talking about this because she had so many fellow Olympians, Black women and mothers who were dying during childbirth, and was just like, someone's got to do something about this. And so I was going to ask you, with everyone from celebrities to activists to politicians and everything in between talking about this, has it resulted in any substantive shifts in what care can look like for us? I mean, it sounds like maybe the answer to that is no, but have there been any improvements over the last few years that you can speak to?
Yes, well, I think that those voices are so important. When I started this work, no one was talking about this. When I started this work, if I mentioned anything about maternal mortality and the rates, everyone was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that the United States had the highest maternal mortality rate of all developed nations. I had no idea that Black mothers were dying at a higher rate. So that has changed. Now people know. But it has all happened in a very short period of time. It's really only been within the last 5 or 10 years that this discussion has become more and more public. And thankfully, it is because of people like Allison Felix and Serena Williams and Beyonce sharing their stories that show that even no matter how much money you have, the best doctors, the best access to everything, it still is not enough. And that once again points to a system error and not a person error, not a human error. But there is some hope there.
We need human on the side of the mother, right? Not human on the side of like the the service provider.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, thank you. But there is some hope there because those voices, now that more people know about it. I was just at the Georgia Capitol 2 weeks ago, and we had a giant group of mothers and birthing people asking for our Georgia legislature to make and pass bills that help birthing parents. And these bills were a wide range from requiring continuing education for all physicians, that they have some continuing education credits in maternal health so they can stay up to date, to requiring that mental health services are covered for pregnant people, to expansion of Medicaid. All of these things are brewing. So they're all right there. We need them to pass, which means we need more people to do what you two are doing today and getting the message out, and letting people know what the challenges are so that we can then begin to fix them on a system level.
Yeah. To your point, right? Like this has to be systematic, because we're hearing it and we're feeling it from all sides. It almost feels like very intentional to think that so many other populations of women their numbers have been able to increase, but also the idea that this is impacting Black women across all social and economic classes. You would assume that women like Serena Williams and Beyonce, who have access to the best doctors, the best care, the money to be able to create an environment for themselves, that they would be able to avoid this. But it seems to be, it doesn't matter, right? We're seeing these same women being impacted the same way that women from lower income. We all recognize that this moment is truly unique, right? At least the last administration, we had an administration that somewhat projected a level of care and understanding and wanted to like research and invest money in it. Those blinders are now off, right? Under frameworks like Project 2025, several conservative think tanks are pushing to eliminate the Office of Women's Health and defund Title V, which supports reproductive and maternal health services, particularly for low-income people. How are advocates ensuring that Black parents and Black families are not being left behind despite these kind of continuous attacks coming from the conservative side?
Yes, it really comes from grassroots, small organizations. We would love for there to be one big national organization that was leading the charge. And yes, in the last administration, we did have the creation of these spaces. We were starting to see change. We were seeing funding. There was funding going to universities and researchers to look into these things that has now all been cut. But that doesn't mean the work stops. The work never, ever stops. And every state has at least a dozen community organizations who this is all we care about. This is all they do, is amplify Black voices, amplify Black parents and Black birthing parents, and ensure that we are safe in our communities. And that just doesn't mean our birthing parents alone, because as I said before, this is an ecosystem. So that means that organizations dealing with environmental racism and food security. That means those who are looking into safer schools and Bright Start programs and pre-K for kids. All of this goes into that ecosystem because all of this affects the person that becomes the parent in the future. All of this affects their health. This affects their health literacy. It all affects who we are, which I think is what makes this problem so difficult to tackle, because it's not just one thing. With the English kits, that was one thing that we could do to see an immediate change, but it didn't change for us. So all hands on deck, no matter what your passion. If it's towards the community, it will help.
Yeah, I love that you frame it that way. And I think what I love most is that it's so multi-pronged, but that's important because when we think, our society, we want that instant gratification of, okay, there's one thing that will do it. And if we all get together and do this one thing, the problem will be fixed. But that's underestimating the problem. And we do need a nuanced solution to what is a nuanced problem. The problem wasn't created overnight, so we're not going to fix it overnight. And I appreciate you framing it in that way. It reminds me too of the Black Maternal Health Omnibus Act, which was introduced in 2021 by Representatives Lauren Underwood and Alma Adams, and also Senator Cory Booker. And it's like a series of policy solutions. They reintroduced it 2 years later in 2023. And here we are in 2025, and it still hasn't been signed into law. So you kind of spoke about how we need people to just be standing up, but how do we put pressure on elected officials to see this as a priority, because it's been introduced multiple times at this point and has never, caught the traction that it's needed to be passed through both the House and the Senate?
Yes. We need to stay in their face. It seems that, letter writing, emailing, showing up, protesting, it feels like that doesn't matter. But it does. And I think what you said, Brea, is so important because oftentimes we are looking for instant gratification. Well, I called my senator, I called my congressman, and I called them 20 times and nothing has changed. You might need to call them 100. You might need to call them 1,000. And there are so many great resources and apps and things now that make that so easy. They have the script ready for you. They'll help you make the phone calls. There are so many ways to do this now that are quick and easy. But if we wake up every morning and after you do your gratitude journal and get yourself centered, we start by just making a couple phone calls. You'll rarely actually talk to the senator or the congressperson. You're likely going to get an aide or a voicemail, but keep your foot on their neck. Let them know you are still there. It is easy to ignore when we are quiet. And I think that is what we are all learning with this new administration, is that we all felt very comfortable in the rights and the liberties and the things that we have always had as Americans. And now we're seeing how quickly that can change. And all of a sudden we're realizing you have to speak up. You have to be on the Senate floor for 25 hours to be heard. And we can all do that in our own way. So speaking up and speaking out.
Because silence may get you killed, right? Like complying in advance might get you killed. Like silence is not going to protect us in this moment, especially when we know that the numbers are only getting worse. And I hate saying numbers because these are real people with real stories and real families that are impacted. But the data is devastating, especially, and I know that's something that a lot of my friends who are either about to have children or thinking about having children are discussing every day, if they're real visceral fear that they have. I'm curious. My last question for you is: I get this is systematic, right? I get this has to happen from the policy level to the medical schools, to the doctors, to the delivery rooms. But is there anything that we can do in our everyday life outside of advocacy that can help to prepare us as women, as partners who support their women, or partners who support their birthing partners, can do to either better advocate for themselves in the delivery room or help to ensure that they're asking the right questions?
Yeah.
So you just said something so important at the very end, which is asking questions. And it's not even so much the right question, because who knows what the right question is? If you're your first time having a baby, you have no idea what to ask. You're asking your friends, you're asking the internet, and you're trying your best. But as scary as these statistics are, we want to lean into that fearless pregnancy as much as possible. We want to lean into joy. We want to lean into preserving ourselves. We want to lean into going outside and being in sunshine, being in community. All of these things help build our physical strength and our mental strength. We want to pour into ourselves and we want to pour into each other. I think the last couple months have made me dip further and further into community. And when I lose, I just reach out to another person in my community, because working in the maternal mortality space, it is very easy to lose hope. It is very frustrated. It is very easy to say, I want to give up, but you can't. You just can't, which means you just have to keep on pouring into yourself with love and graciousness, and keep on pouring into others with the same, and encouraging people to ask questions. Do not worry about how dumb that question might sound or what other people might think. You are paying for a service wherever you go. You are paying the doctor. It is not the other way around. You are paying that midwife, that birthing center, not the other way around. You hold the power. It is your body. So no one can make you do anything. They can really be intimidating sometimes, but that belief, that strength within yourself, that this is your body, this is your pregnancy, and you have every right to have 100% ownership of it, is so, so important. So if there was one thing that we could do, it would be to pour into yourself.
Thank you for that. That's agree more. Can you tell folks how they can get in touch with you, how they can stay connected for more information?
Absolutely. Yes. You can find us on pretty much all platforms at Pea Pod Nutrition. So that's PEA POD Nutrition on Instagram. Our website is www.peapodnutrition.org. And we're also on TikTok at the ADHD Nutritionist.
Awesome. Yes, I love it.
A million, a zillion %, as my co-host would say. We really appreciate you coming on today. And again, continue to check her out and all of the resources that she has available. For those who are watching, this is On the Other Side of Change. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with additional information to keep you going as you continue to advocate for yourself and those you love most.
What's up, y'all? Look, Fanbase is more than a platform. It's a movement to empower creators, offering a unique opportunity for everyday people to invest in Black-owned tech, infrastructure, and help shape the future of social media. Investing in technology is essential for creating long-term wealth and influence in the digital age. The Black community must not only consume tech, we must own it.
Discover how equity crowdfunding can serve as a powerful tool for funding Black businesses, allowing entrepreneurs to raise capital directly through their community through the Jobs Act.
Okay, Alicia just gave me everything that I needed on this Thursday. So grateful for her. As y'all know, as always, this conversation is far from over. Even when Black Maternal Health Week ends, it is always a good time to be thinking about, talking about, and advocating for Black birthing people. So we hope that this helped clarify the stakes, what some of the solutions are, how you can get involved, and what the fight ahead will look like.
No, couldn't agree more. And if you want to dive deeper, check out Pregnant While Black by Dr. Monique Ranford and Killing the Black Body by Dorothy Roberts. You can also follow groups like Sister Song and the National Birth Equity Collaborative. All are great resources to keep learning and growing.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. They're all Black led, of course, because that's what we do here. But yeah, just stay engaged. As Alicia said, we just cannot shut up about these topics. We have to know our rights. We have to organize. We have to help others know their rights, hold our representatives accountable, keep their feet to the fire. And until next time, let's keep pushing for this just future, which is possible on the other side of change.